What's up, gangsters? It is a cold, well, not cold, feels cold to me, but damp and chilly and cloudy day out here at Rube Goldberg Enterprises, and it has been all week. And yeah, my mojo is not great. I've been working on a very cool kit, the Industria Mechanica Cosmonaut. I think she's, let's see, Cosmonaut number 3? Number 2? I don't know. Anyway, resin kit of a female dystopian future cosmonaut as envisioned by an artist named Derek Stinning. So, very cool stuff. If you're not familiar with Industria Mechanica, get on over there, but you might want to leave your wallet locked in a cabinet, because when you get to Industria Mechanica, you will want to buy shit. Their stuff is super, super cool, and it's very high quality resin. Anyway, so that's not what I'm talking about. What I am talking about is that a couple of days ago, I got a friend request on Facebook and a message in my private messages from a guy who very friendly and was very clearly from someplace in Latin America. And so we get to chit-chatting. He told me he'd watched my channel and etc. and wanted to know if I would be interested in doing an interview for a blog that he runs. And I was like, well, yeah, sure, I guess, cool. You must, not have anybody else to ask to do it, because that's a really low bar, but whatever. We agreed that I would do it, and it was kind of cool because we got to talking. I was curious which part of Latin America he was from. He said, I'm from Argentina, and that's where our blog is based. And I was like, oh, really? Well, I lived in Argentina for a while once upon a time. What city? Buenos Aires. So that was pretty cool because I actually did an engineering co-op job program back in my college days when I lived in Argentina for about 9 months. And so that was kind of cool. I spent a lot of my time in a portion of the city called Belgrano. So, and I hung out a lot at a bar there where all the embassy people hung out called the Grizzly Bar. And so if any of you guys who are watching this, who are from Argentina or from Buenos Aires, know that bar, go check it out. Or if you haven't been, or if you live in Belgrano or whatever, I think it's still there. Not owned by the same people anymore. But anyway, just kind of was cool to make that connection with somebody from halfway around the world and a part of my life that happened many years ago. So anyway, he sent me the Word document with the interview questions, and then he said, hey man, do you want to just do them on video? And I said, well, yeah, sure, but if I'm going to do them on video, I might as well just do it for my channel. And he thought that was a cool idea. So anyway, here it is. I've got all of the questions printed out here, so I got to put on my goofy glasses, or birth control, as we used to call them in the Marine Corps. And I should tell you first that the blog is called Aviones e Escala, which basically means airplanes in scale. My Spanish is muy horrible these days, but I do remember enough to know that that's what that means. If you want to know how it's spelled, it is right there. The website is avionesaescala.com.ar, if I remember correctly. So anyway, it's pretty cool. Let's get to the questions. I don't want this to take forever, and I'm sure you guys don't either. Anyway, the first few questions are, place and date of birth, age, marital status. That's all stuff you don't need to know or care about, so we're skipping that. Question 4. Many scale modelers have started building models as a game, using them as toys when a child, but at some point in their lives, they have, stopped playing and have started building in a more professional way. Do you remember that transition? Not really. I started building models the first time around, like a lot of guys, when I was just a wee lad, and I had a friend who was 4 or 5 years older than me, and he was in junior high, and he had scads of model airplanes hanging from the ceiling in his bedroom, and I thought he was a cool guy, so I thought building models must be cool, and I asked for one for Christmas, and I was off and running. And I just sort of being wired the way I am was immediately pissed off about how terribly I did at it. I mean, I didn't understand why I think it was like a Ford Model A pickup or something was my first model that my parents got me for Christmas. And I just didn't understand why the damn thing didn't look exactly like the one on the box cover. And within a couple of years, I discovered the library at the local community college had books about it had a classic book called The Modeler's Handbook. And I feel bad for anybody else who tried to check that book out for about 3 years because I had it on permanent loan. And I started entering my models in the county fair, and I was about as serious as you could be about it at that age, up until I got my driver's license. So I didn't really ever go through that transition. I just was into it right from the beginning. Okay, how many kits do you have in your stash waiting to be built? Not very many. I'm anti-stash. My entire stash is probably about 20 kits. And a bunch of them are kits that have come to me in various ways. People have sent them to me. I got one where a lady on ISM said that if I helped her solve her paint problem, she'd buy me the kit of my choice. So I did, and I've got it. And, I have a few others. And then I just, like I said, I'm not a stasher. I don't want a huge stash because basically it all looks like a big pile of work waiting to be done yet. And I don't like that. I'm basically lazy, and I like for my piles of work to do to be small. So not much of a stash. Number 6, choose an element of scale modeling, a tool, accessory, paint, etc. that has changed your way of working or the way you finish a model, something you believe has been revolutionary for this hobby. I'll pick 2 things. One is Tamiya Extra Thin. If you're like me and your first go-round in model making was using the old orange tube of Testor's glue that was stringy and sticky, and you got it on your face and your fingers and everywhere else, and then you come back to it 30 years later and you find that you can stick parts together and then just wick some Tamiya Extra Thin in there, and bam, it's job done. For me, that was a major game changer. It basically changes your entire strategy because you get to find out sooner if parts don't fit, and you can take care of that more proactively. It's less messy. I mean, it's great. I love Tamiya Extra Thin. The other thing that I love that's been really revolutionary for me is oils. Right here, oil paints. Basically, I learned about oil paint rendering a la Mike Rinaldi a year or so ago, and when I first started trying it, it just didn't click for me. And I think that that's true for a lot of people. But I kept tinkering with it, and then one day it did click, and I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. There's just nothing I view as being more powerful in terms of our ability to bring a model to life through weathering and tonal variation, and just really create something that's got a unique color palette and a lot of visual interest. I mean, it expands. I think any model maker's ability to exercise their creative vision by orders of magnitude. So I just love oil paint rendering, and it's the part of the model making process I look forward to the most. And it's kind of a bummer because basically everything I do up to that point is about building a canvas that I can do oil paint rendering on. And I spend months getting to that point, and then I have like a week of oil paint rendering bliss, and then it's over. So, it's kind of a bummer in that way, but still, that does not dampen my enthusiasm for it at all. So, okay, how many hours do you dedicate to this hobby? Is it a full-time activity? If not, how do you manage your time? I am curious about such things, and so I added it up. I've added it up once or twice, and it looks like I spend between 1,500 and 2,000 hours a year on model making. And a big chunk of that is time spent on the internet doing research, managing a Facebook group with a couple of other guys, Matt McDougall and Jim DeCesar. We manage the Scale Modelers Critique Group, which is a fantastic, fun place, where we get up to lots of shenanigans. And so between all of that stuff, yeah, it is basically a full-time job, because 2,000 hours a year is basically 40 hours a week for 50 weeks a year. So I manage my time by hitting it, just an hour here, an hour there, 2 or 3 hours there. Just depends. And the reason that I can do that is basically because, and this gets into the reason why I got into model making for the second time in my life. I am pretty severely disabled as the result of a spinal cord injury that I suffered about 8 years ago. I was initially paralyzed from the neck down. It's not something that I talk about a whole lot, and I think this may come as news to some of you guys, even though you've noticed that my hands do weird things when I actually, the rare times I have them on camera. But anyway, I've managed to make a remarkable recovery. I can walk and drive and do most of the things that I have to do, but at great expense of my energy. It's still a battle that I fight all day, every day, and I'm nowhere close to being able to hold down a normal job or anything like that. So I have plenty of time, and scale modeling was something that I started doing as a way to help rehabilitate my fine motor skills, and it just kind of took on a life of its own. I had a kit that I had been working on as part of my occupational therapy, and I decided that if I wanted to really finish it the way that I felt like I should, that I was going to have to buy some tools. And the next thing I knew, I was on ISM, International Scale Modelers, message board and Facebook group, and then I decided to make a video, and yeah, it just spiraled out of control from there. But it's been a really good thing for me. It's easy for it to be for it to take up as much of my time as it does, because I have both the craftsmanship aspect, which I've always loved, and the social media aspect, which makes it a lot of fun. So that's why I have basically a full-time model making gig. It's not because I'm just one of those lucky few who does it as a bill-paying enterprise. So anyway, long explanation for answer for question number 7. Could you please share with us a picture of your workstation? I guess, that's where my paint is, and this right down here is my bench. If I remember to, I'll put a JPEG right here. Anyway, do you remember which was your first model and how did you get it, or did you buy it, or was it a gift? I think I already answered that. I think that was that Model A Chevrolet or Ford pickup that I built when I was like 8 or 9. And built is definitely a being generous. Okay, let's see. Something is not right because... Oh, wait. Yeah, there's questions on the back. I was like, how did I go from number 9 to number 27? They have like 32 questions here. So anyway, question 10. Do you have any idea of how many models you have built so far? I don't know how many I built the first go round, because none of those are still left. I can remember a lot of them. But in my second incarnation as a model maker, I have so far built 23 projects, and that's over the last 3 years, basically. Tell us about your modeling routine. Do you have a special time of day at night? No, it's like I said, an hour here, an hour there, just basically whenever I feel good and I'm motivated. And that's pretty much 7 days a week. Which is your favorite process when building a model and why? I think I answered that part already, the oil paint rendering part. And really the entire weathering process for me is where it is the most fun and the most satisfying. I just really look forward to that first moment when I start adding oil stains and grease and fuel spills and chips and all of those things. That's just, I love that part. Which project or model are you working on now? I think I answered that. I'm doing this Industria Mechanica thing. I also have a couple of other projects going. I'm building the Hasegawa F4E Phantom. We're kind of doing a buddy build on SMCG. And I'm doing, I chose to do the Hasegawa kit with all of the resin bits you can throw at it. So that's been pretty fun, but a lot of work. And then I've got the Accurate Miniatures Now Academy 148th B25B Mitchell also going. And anybody who knows my YouTube channel knows that I built one of those and I did a 10-part series on it a year or so ago. And given all of the drama and the trauma with that project, you probably would wonder why I would ever subject myself to doing another one, because it is in fact a terrible kit. And the answer is, I'm a whore. A collector ran across my YouTube channel earlier this year and contacted me about building one for him. And I never really wanted to be a commission builder, and I still don't, but he's just a really cool guy. And I felt like he really respected what I do, and I told him, you can't afford it. And he said, try me, and I did, and I gave him what I felt like was a fair price, and so off we went, and it's really been a rewarding experience so far. But don't get any ideas. I don't want any more commission work. Well, maybe. I shouldn't say never. I try to always remain open to all sorts of experiences. Anyhow, number 14, when building models, are the details important to you? How important is the historical fidelity? Yes, I love the details, and I really try hard to reproduce as much of a historical miniature as I possibly can. I like the research aspect of it, and I have a pretty good stash of reference photos that I continue to try and build. What do you think? Oh, wait, everybody has a favorite plane. Which one is yours and why? My instant answer is typically the P-51 Mustang, and I know that's cliche, but I just love it. It's pure sex with wings. I feel like if you don't love the Mustang, you're just not a real man. Sorry. But I am also a big, huge fan of the Hawker Tempest. That is a real man's airplane. 2,400 horsepower, 24 cylinders, 48 spark plugs, 450 miles an hour. I mean, how can you not love that? But I really love all planes, even super ugly ones like the Focke-Wulf FW190D model. I mean, that thing is an abomination. I'm pretty sure Kurt Tank lost a bet when he designed that thing. Anyway, they didn't ask me which was my least favorite, so I should shut up. What do you think about scale model contests? Do you like to participate or just go? There's not any in my area, so I live way out here in the middle of nowhere in New Mexico, which for you guys that live in Argentina and don't know United States geography, this is way out west, kind of in the desert. And I live in a little bitty town, and there's no scale modeling contest. I mean, maybe the county fair still does it, but so I haven't gone to one. And quite frankly, based on the reports that I see about them online, I'm a little skeptical about whether or not I would want to do that. We very often have people posting complete photo sets and reports of their experiences at competitions in their area. And sometimes, quite frankly, it just seems like the judging makes no sense whatsoever. And that's not an indictment of the IPMS, but it certainly does seem like the IPMS maybe doesn't really, I mean, as a rule, it almost seems like they discourage models that are weathered. And that, for me, kind of like makes it a deal breaker, because that's the opposite of how I look at it. So I don't know. I mean, maybe I shouldn't say all that, because it's really just kind of my impression based on bits and pieces from social media, and we all know how dangerous it is to form impressions based on that. So I don't know. If I ever had an opportunity to go to a contest and it was easy, and I had a piece that I felt like might, somehow do well, then I might do it just for the experience. But thus far, no contests for me. Do you have a personal waste site? Do you have a personal website, Facebook or blog? No. This YouTube channel is my personal website. I do spend a lot of my time at Scale Modelers Critique Group for all the reasons I said before, but I don't consider that my personal page or anything. That is a community that we've built that's a lot of fun, and it's there for everybody. It's not my personal platform. Do you have any modeler as a reference, someone you admire that motivates you to improve your models? Can you recommend us a particular work of that modeler? I'll give you two answers to that. I am personally inspired every day by the stuff that we see in the Scale Modelers Critique Group. And that goes from the stuff that's not that great to the stuff that's just amazing. And it covers a wide range, because we encourage people to post in there no matter what their skill level is, because really, in spite of the name having the word critique in it, we really are all about craftsmanship and learning. And so anybody who posts in there can count on getting honest feedback, with no insults or personal attacks or anything like that, because we just don't tolerate it. But if you post your model, and someone says, hey, your paint looks a little rough, I mean, that's what we do. And then hopefully the conversation turns to, well, how do I make my paint not rough? And everybody learns. And so I admire all of the people who post in there, because look, it does take some courage to put yourself out there and just, blatantly, where you're going to get a lot of feedback that might not even, that you might not like. So, but as far as like, who are my model making heroes? I do have a couple. I'm a huge fan of Mike Rinaldi's work and of his contributions to the hobby as a whole. Because if you don't know, he writes some beautiful books, the whole Tank Art series, the single model series books, beautifully photographed and a great resource for any model maker. But I really love the sort of intersection of artistic vision and realism or authenticity, where not only does everything look like it could be full size, but it's done in a way that's visually interesting and appealing. And that's a tough place to get to, but Mike Rinaldi, I feel, is the best at it. At least when it comes to armor, which really is what he focuses on. I don't know if he's ever done an airplane. I wish he would do, and do a book about it, because I know he would sell a bunch, and it would be great to see that. But as far as aircraft go, I think the guy who sort of sets the bar for me, because he does the same sort of thing with artistic vision and authenticity with aircraft, is Baraccaroli. He's from somewhere in Eastern Europe, and he's just unbelievably talented. It's ridiculous how much talent that one guy has. He paints, he sculpts, and he's legit good at all of the above. But his aircraft models are fantastic, and I don't know if you can find him any other place than on Facebook. But his webpage, I think, or his Facebook page, is accessible. It's Berakaroli, Baraccaroli. So, you aircraft guys, if you haven't heard of him, check him out, because his work is very, very good. And there's There's quite a few others that are really top flight builders, whose work I always enjoy seeing. But I think, oh, one more I got to mention, because he's like the best model maker nobody ever heard of, and his name is Carlos Starton, and he is. He's done some articles for some of the Mr. Black military figure books, but he's recently been building scale motorcycles, like the Tamiya 1/12 scale GP bikes. And I mean, his figures are just amazing enough, but his work on these 1/12 motorcycle kits is just phenomenal, the best I've seen on the internet. His attention to detail and his execution is just flawless. I mean, the guy can polish out a clear coat and make a gloss finish better than anybody I've seen. Just absolutely flawless. And he hangs out in a Facebook group called Scale Motorcycle Models, I think is right. He's an admin there, and he also hangs out at SMCG as well. But he doesn't make a big deal out of his work. But he is just a real badass and a super cool guy on top of it. So those are my three guys: Mike Rinaldi, Barrett Caroli, and Carlos Starton. Okay, from your point of view, scale modeling just a hobby, or can it be considered as art? Yeah, this is an easy one for me. If you just take the kit out of the box, build it exactly per the instructions, and paint it exactly per the color call-out sheet, then it's a hobby. I mean, you're just assembling it and painting it and following the instructions, and I don't feel like there's a lot of creative vision involved there. But if you take that same kit and you build it the same way, and then you paint it according to a reference photograph, and you do the weathering in the way that you feel best interprets that, and you apply your creative vision and your imagination to telling a story, then to me it's art. Because in my mind, the definition of art is that you exercise creative vision through intent and skill to achieve a specific finished product. And so to me, just look, even if you just take it as the technical definition, then yes, it's art. The problem is that a lot of people confuse the term art with a judgment about whether it's good or bad. And I try to separate those two things, because I don't think that the term art is dependent on the medium. In other words, it doesn't have to be a painting or a sculpture. Just because it's plastic that gets put together from a kit doesn't mean that it can't be art. It's still a canvas. It's just a 3D canvas. So I don't think that whether or not it's art is really up to the viewer, because I mean, look, the viewer just decides whether or not they like it. They don't particularly get to know what went into creating it. So you could look at something that was paint by numbers and think, wow, that's beautiful, but it's not art. As opposed to looking at a painting that you don't really care for, but the artist spent a year of his life and all of his skill and energy in creating it. It's still art. Doesn't matter if you don't like it. So, yes, I think the answer really is both. Do you have any other hobby besides modeling? I spent the last few years of my active working life as a photographer, and that developed from a hobby into a business. So photography is still and always will be a passion for me as well. Panel lines with oils, old school, or with new products like ammo or AK washes? Yes. I don't care if it's old school or new school. All I care about is results. So if using oil paint rendering to do panel lines is the most effective thing, then that's what I'm going to do. If I can get it out of a bottle, and I have quite a few bottles of MIG's ammo panel line washes, then I'm going to do that too. For me, I don't get hung up on any of that stuff. It's purely about whether or not it delivers results. 22. What technique do you consider essential when giving life to a model? I think I've already covered that pretty well. For me, it's all about the weathering. And there's a bunch of different techniques that go along with that I could spend like hours talking about. But the simple answer is it's weathering. And just to be clear, I don't think weathering is just pigments or oils or chipping. Weathering also happens during the painting process if you paint according to a story that you're trying to tell. How do you think your family and friends feel about this love for plastic? Have they told you something about this? They like it. They dig the fact that I have something I can do that helps with my recovery from my injury and that gives me purpose and a way to, spend my time. So, yep, they like it. Which is your favorite manufacturer? That's easy, Tamiya. They don't have a huge, the largest number of kits, and there's lots of kits that we wish Tamiya would come out with. Hello, a good P38 Lightning, please. But if you just look at it, I think objectively in terms of the quality of their engineering, their molding, the fit, the finish, all of the above, I just don't think anybody else, at least when it comes to aircraft, stacks up to Tamiya. When you get into other things like armor or sci-fi or car kits or whatever, yeah, sure. The answer might be different, but you guys are aircraft modelers, so I'm answering in those terms. Which period, region, or industry of the aviation is your favorite one when building? I really have always been a World War II prop guy. That's always been my favorite thing. I just love and I know it's romanticized because, those guys really lived a very scary life filled with death and danger, but I kind of had this romantic vision of being a World War II fighter pilot, and so that's always been my favorite thing. But I have been slowly pushing my way towards more modern jets. Hence the F4, and I did build an F-86 earlier this year, so we'll get there. I love all planes. Photo etched and resins or scratch building, do you have any preference? Again, no. I'm going to do whatever I have to do to get the result that I want. If I can get there by buying a resin or a photo etch part, then yeah, I'm going to do it. Because I don't really want to waste time with scratch building if I don't have to. Because again, I'm trying to get to the canvas stage of having something to paint. So I'll do whatever I got to do. If I got to scratch build it, I'll scratch build it. Have you ever felt frustrated when building a model? Did you finish or decide to build another one? Yeah, I get frustrated on the daily. I'm always second guessing my skills and my decisions and my execution. So yeah, I just exist in a state of low-level frustration, but I do always finish. There was one exception. A couple of years ago, I decided to build the Revell 1/12 scale Yamaha DT1. Motorcycle guys will know that was basically the first dirt bike that was ever sort of mass-produced, and it came about in the late 60s. And a friend of mine still has the one that he got started in motorcycling on. And I decided that I was going to build one for him. Terrible idea, because it's a terrible, terrible kit that is actually almost as old as his DT1 is itself. And it was just beyond my skill level to make it look as good as I wanted it to. And so, yeah, I threw that one away. But of the 20 plus projects I've done in the last 3 years, that's the only one that ended up in the trash can. Okay, any activity you do not enjoy when building? Yes. I absolutely despise clipping parts off the sprue. I would almost pay someone else to do that. It's just annoying to me. I know that sounds silly because you got to do it. It's part of the process. But it just takes a lot of energy and time for me that is just, it's like back in the day when I was a motocross guy for my whole life. That's how I actually got hurt. And the part of I was just a hardcore motocross guy. And the part of the motocross day that I hated the most was driving to the track. Basically anything that stood between me and the fun that I was going to have was a pain in my ass, and I view clipping parts off the sprue in exactly the same way. It drives me crazy. So anyway, would you like sharing a picture of your showcase? No, because I don't really have one. I have various shelves and things, and where I keep my work and on my desk and so forth, but I don't really have a showcase. How do you define yourself, as a rivet counter devoted to dimensional and historical reality, or a relaxed modeler with some permission? Someone who thinks if it looks like a spit, so it is a spit. Yeah, I get pretty hardcore about trying to match my reference photographs as much as possible when it comes to paint and weathering. But the thing you have to accept about reference photographs is that you pretty much can only ever see one side of whatever it is you're looking at. I mean, especially if it's from World War II or whatever. And so you can't get too hung up on being exact about it, even if you have a reference photo, because you're going to have to use your imagination for the parts that you can't see, right? So it is what it is, and so I'm kind of relaxed in that way. I go at it as hard as I can with respect to what I feel like I can know, and the rest of it I don't worry too much about. And that gets into like the shape and so forth of a model. As long as I don't look at it and go, oh, damn, that's wrong, then I'm fine. And I very rarely end up feeling that way. A good example of when I did is the new Airfix 148 P51D. I mean, I looked at that thing and instantly was like, whoa, there's several things not right about the shape of that deal. So I would never buy that kit. I mean, that's enough to bother me. But if there's something wrong, for example, with this F4 that I'm building, hey, if Hasegawa made a mistake, I wouldn't know it because I just don't know enough about the aircraft. I'm building it purely because I found a picture of one online that I fell in love with and said, that is a painting and weathering challenge. I have to do that. And the rest of it, I don't get too hung up about. In fact, one of my online buddies, Chris Corse, was asking me the other day if I was going to order the resin, their little intake scoops on the either side of the nose of an F4. And he asked me if I was going to order them. And I was like, yeah, not really. I didn't think anything was wrong with the ones in the kit. And it was a good thing because he came back a couple days later and said, hey, don't bother because the resin ones are terrible. They don't fit. So there you go. Bullet dodged. Okay, 31. We're almost done, I promise. Lately, the modeler's world has changed and improved regarding techniques and products. Do you stay loyal to the old school and keep your previous techniques, or are you informed about the latest releases? Look, I try to be as bleeding edge as I can be and need to be. I want to learn about new ways of doing things, but only because it might serve me to get better results. It's not that I love the brand new for the sake of it being brand new. I just want to know if I can be more effective. And so that's why I also have plenty of respect for the old school techniques. I mean, there are certain things that are never going to change. You always got to use sandpaper at some point. You're always going to have to fill a gap with some kind of a filler at some point. You're always going to have to pick up a paintbrush at some point. There is no new school for those things. You might find a better style of paintbrush or a better filler material that's been invented, but you still are dependent on your old school skills to use those things. So, again, I don't get too hung up on old school or new school. My only loyalty is to results. Okay, 32. What can you tell people that are entering the modeling world? Any advice or words of encouragement? Yeah, pretty simple. Just do it. Don't let your dreams be dreams, dudes. Model making is a fantastic way to burn your creative energy, your skill, your time. It's a labor of love, and I think that there's very few things that a guy can do that's as rewarding, in basically 20 square feet of space. I've always been a craftsman my entire life. I've always loved working with my hands. I view the process of building thing as a manly enterprise. And it doesn't matter to me that it's tiny. I still get the same sense of satisfaction and fulfillment out of that process. And I think everybody, and it doesn't really have to be. Look, I shouldn't say it's manly because look, it doesn't matter if you're a boy or a girl. Model making is still fun and cool, and still a great way to exercise your creative urges. So I would say to anybody who's been thinking about it or who is early on in the process and the learning curve, to just get after it. Yeah, I mean, it can be intimidating because there's lots to learn. And if you start reading online forums and, books and things like that and watching these YouTube videos, it can be pretty overwhelming because there are so many things to know. Because a complete model kit project involves, if you really go the whole way, it involves trying to purchase the right things, which may involve doing some research because you may want to know what the right color of paint is or what the right type of aftermarket accessories are. Then you got to build the thing, so you've got some pure craftsmanship going on there. Then you've got the painting, which is a whole thing, a whole skill set unto itself. And then if you want to go on and do weathering, then that's a whole other level of artistic expression. And then if you like presenting your work, then there's the photography aspect of it, or doing videos. So look, it's one of few things that I think you can do as a pastime that encompasses so many opportunities to learn stuff and grow your skills. So don't be intimidated by all that. Just enjoy the ride, get on the journey, and go for it. That's what I would say. So, okay, there's the interview. Espero que estaba bueno. That's, I hope, a decent Spanish for I hope it was good. Me gusta mucho. I liked doing it a lot, and I hope that JB, I appreciate you asking me, and I'm flattered that you thought I was worthy of your time. And I hope that all of your readers of your blog enjoyed this and that they agree. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to hit me up down in the comments down below. Or come find me at Scale Modelers Critique Group or on Facebook. I'm pretty easy to locate. So with that, I guess I'll just say, as I always do, thanks for tuning in. Much love.